What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. We are back. We're trying to get back to a normal schedule now, as we talked about in yesterday's episode. October is definitely one of the biggest sports months, if not the biggest sports month of the year, with all just everything happening. MLB obviously postseason starting tomorrow. NFL heading into Week 5. College football we're halfway through, and the NBA and NHL seasons are just about to get going later this month. Ari, this is my favorite month of the year for sports. How you doing so far? It's October 6th. Mariners wild card games tomorrow, 24 hours almost. Getting excited?
Oh, no doubt about it. At 1 o'clock Pacific time tomorrow on Friday. We have all four wild card games tomorrow throughout the day, so that should be exciting. Like you said, this is arguably the best month of the year. Just with so many different sports going on at once, and it'll be even more by the time we get to later this month when NBA and NHL get kicked off with the regular season as well.
Yeah, we're gonna get into so much of that stuff later. NBA, NHL, NFL, college football, baseball. We're gonna get into all that stuff. But today we wanted to go straight into the NFL, obviously previewing Week 5 of the NFL season, and Week 5 starts tonight with our first matchup of the night, the Colts and Broncos. The Colts, obviously, big issue. No Jonathan Taylor. He is out with a high ankle sprain that he sustained last week. And so the Colts pretty much lose their whole offense. Not like they had an offense this year to begin with. Down year for Jonathan Taylor. But they lose an offense against a good Broncos defense that has proven to, be able to handle themselves in tough situations. And for the Broncos, obviously, the whole let Russ cook is kind of fizzling out. He's cooking up a nice toothpaste pasta right there. But big loss for the Broncos as well. No Javonte Williams. He tore his ACL last week, so he's out for the whole season. So they have to depend on Melvin Gordon and his fumbling issues to really lead this charge. And ironically, this is kind of a revenge game for Philip Lindsay because now he's on Indianapolis and they just elevated him from the practice squad. So, a little revenge game playing against his former team. But these two teams are definitely teams that have kind of, fizzled out offensively when they were expected to do a lot more offensively this year. The Colts behind JT after his amazing performance last year. They bring in Matt Ryan. They had Michael Pittman still. And then for the Broncos, obviously, the only thing that was holding them back was was just a quarterback. And now they traded for him. And, there's still a lot of problems out there. Some people say that it's Nathaniel Hackett and his play calling, and some people say that just Russ cannot play football well anymore. Ari, look, from a fantasy standpoint, is there really any big things to really note here? Obviously, the Colts and Broncos, teams that really don't have a steady offense week to week, except for Courtland Sutton, who's one of kind of emerged as a receiver, Russell Wilson's favorite receiver. What do you like offensively from this matchup?
Yeah, I was huge on Courtland Sutton all offseason. He's doing what I expected him to do. Russell Wilson, I guess probably the biggest factor, like you said, both backfields missing their starting running back. Obviously, Broncos out for the season. Javonte Williams, Jonathan Taylor is likely more short term. So I'm curious to see how each backfield is going to look like with Nyheim Hines, leading the way for the Colts, and then likely Melvin Gordon for the Broncos. So I'm looking forward to that. That's most people I'm looking forward to. I was going to take the Colts if Jonathan Taylor was healthy, but without him, I just can't see their offense doing enough. So I think the Broncos are going to do just enough to squeak away with the win, but I think it's going to be another one of those kind of ugly, lower scoring Thursday night games that we've kind of seen quite often.
Yeah, you talked about we've talked about the Colts, right? And Jonathan Taylor, he was supposed to have this bounce back to back, wonderful seasons. Last year he was finished as pretty much the number one player in fantasy, led by that offensive line of the Colts. And then this year he's kind of just, been so inconsistent, having some games where he's, hot, some games when the Colts offense is not. And then you mentioned the Broncos, definitely one of the more struggling offenses this year behind Russell Wilson, who is also injured, but it was more limited. Oh, kind of funny that Mr. Unlimited is limited now. But that's besides the point. We talked about Courtland Sutton. and how we thought that Russell Wilson's going to be throwing the ball his way a lot more, and that's pretty evident this year. Definitely Melvin Gordon in the backfield. That's definitely a big question because, yes, he does have fumbling issues, but he kind of has to step up in this position now that Javonte Williams is out for the remainder of the season, which is tough. And especially fortunately, it's early enough where he'll hopefully make a return next year, but it's still an ACL, and that was a brutal injury for Javonte Williams. So hopefully a speedy recovery for him. But yeah, you mentioned offensively, it's kind of hard to really gauge this game just because, the offense of the Colts has definitely been struggling all year. And, now they lose their star running back, and now Matt Ryan has to throw the ball against a good secondary in the Broncos, and they definitely have a good pass rush. And then the Broncos obviously have struggled just offensively this year. And if the Colts can hold the Chiefs down, I'm pretty sure the Colts can hold the Broncos down. So offensively, I don't expect much either, but, it'll definitely be interesting to see how the Colts will have to respond now that they don't have no Jonathan Taylor. I mean, for the Broncos, obviously Russell Wilson's going to be throwing the ball probably a lot more now that Melvin Gordon's going to be the leading back. And, Javonte Williams was kind of known for just his tackle breaking ability. So to lose him is a big loss for this Broncos offense. And we'll see what happens tonight, but I expect, a pretty low scoring, tight game. It's an early week, obviously, short rest. And not everyone on the Broncos is healthy either. And it's for a home game. I expect this pretty low scoring, and not a lot of offense in this game. Maybe mostly a defensive game. Pretty low scoring. I'm taking under if I was a sports bettor as well. I'm a serious sports bettor in a legal state. I'm definitely would be taking the under in this game. I don't even know what the line is at, but just offensively, I just don't see that much happening for either team. And so that's the first game. That's tonight at 5:15. We have Sunday morning in London action once again. This time it's between the Giants and the Packers. Giants recently literally just signed Landon Collins. A nice reunion for Landon Collins to go back to his original team in New York, and he's heading on the flight to London. And obviously the Packers, coming off a gritty win against the Patriots at home in overtime. The thing that's been struggling with the Packers is just the offense. Aaron Rodgers has still not found his number one receiver yet. Just looks like he really misses Davante Adams a lot more than he thinks, and it's pretty evident. I feel like Davante Adams really misses Aaron Rodgers a lot more right now. But, offensively, I feel like the Giants are kind of getting the groove right now. Daniel Jones, scrambling out for those 2 touchdowns last week. We've seen Saquon Barkley kind of have a resurgence last week against the Bears. He looked like he was definitely back in his good old 2000 rookie year form. And, the Giants offense passing wise has definitely struggled, but on the ground, definitely has seen a huge improvement from last year to this year, especially from that front line. Ari, what do you like in this game? Obviously, it's an early morning, so a lot of people are going to be forgetting to set their starting lineups probably again. But what do you like in this early morning match between the Giants and the Packers?
Yeah, I mean, the Giants, Saquon Barkley, that's really it on that offense that you can, feel confident in fantasy. With the Packers, you mentioned Rodgers and his receivers. The last couple of weeks, Romeo Doubs has kind of been his go-to the last couple of weeks, but then Lazard had over 100 yards himself last week. So, it's between Lazard and Doubs as the number one. I think it's possible it could kind of switch most weeks as to who leads, them in targets and catches and yards. The Giants are 3-1, so get on them to a hot start, but they might be the worst 3-1 team in the history of the NFL, potentially. The Packers are an 8-point favorite, and I think they're that big of a favorite for the reason. The over/under is pretty low at 41, so it's probably going to be a pretty low scoring game. But yeah, I think the Packers win pretty easily.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like this Packers defense is going to shut down, Saquon Barkley. They've been able to handle the run a lot better as of late this year, and I feel like even though Saquon is just something different, we've seen him breaking tackles, and his his running ability, I still feel like this is definitely the Packers' game to lose. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is the better quarterback. He has, the veteran leadership to get a win, even with his receivers not really being up to par. We've seen, how he used Aaron Jones, Robert Tonyan a lot more, and he still has some veteran leadership with Allen Lazard and Sammy Watkins in the receiving core. So I feel like the Packers do get the early win as well. In London, I'm taking under as well. I don't think either offense is really going to be doing too much. Aaron Rodgers, I mean, we'll see. Obviously, Giants defense, they've been, given they played the Bears last week, but still, able to handle the pass. But the Giants now, I believe Kenny Golladay is out for this game as well. But look, it's not like he's doing anything. Like, I had the same stat sheet as him pretty much last week, but he got paid more money than I did to do that. So, and then I believe just a bunch of injuries in that receiving core as well. I just don't think
they might get Tony and Wan'Dale Robinson back this week, which will obviously help the offense. But we kind of have to see what they're gonna do before we can trust them or anything.
Exactly, and I feel like this passing attack for the Giants really hasn't really done anything this year. The offense has been led by Saquon Barkley, and that's kind of just how it's going to be. And I feel like the Packers are just going to be stacking the box, neutralizing his ability to get outside, and I feel like that's what's going to lead the Packers to a win in London early Sunday morning. But continuing with the Sunday slate, we have the Steelers going up to Buffalo to play the Bills. Obviously, new regime, new season for the Steelers now that Mitch Trubisky is on the bench, and they put in the rookie that they drafted out of Pittsburgh, ironically, Kenny Pickett. He is starting now for the remainder of the season, presumably for this Pittsburgh Steelers offense, who lost to the Jets last week at home. And then for the Bills, obviously, the Bills are still a contender in that AFC East along with the Dolphins, who lost on Thursday last week to the Bengals in very controversial way for the Dolphins, but that's beside the point. The Bills came back down 20-3, scored 20 unanswered to beat the Ravens on the road. Gritty win for that Bills team. Now returning home, Ari. Look, I mean, I feel like Stephon Diggs obviously did not have that big booming week that a lot of people were kind of hoping for, kind of a lockdown week for him, but not really like a lockdown. He still managed to have a few receptions for about 60-something yards. Do you expect to bounce back now that they're playing at home? Or, I mean, obviously the Steelers defense is kind of what's kept them in games for pretty much most of the season, being able to turn over the ball, getting pressure in the face of the quarterback. What do you expect from the Bills offensively? And for the Steelers, obviously, last week, they're still trying to get used to Kenny Pickett now. And, that Buffalo defense is still legit, one of the best in the country. What do you expect?
Yeah, I mean, you're starting Diggs either way, obviously, no matter what he does. I mean, I think he should have a better game, but, any given week, he can pop off like 100+ and 2 touchdowns. So, obviously, you're starting Diggs every week in fantasy. On the Steelers, I mean, it's tough to say because it's only, one half of Kenny Pickett, and then now that he has a whole week to practice with the first team offense, that can change a lot. I mean, it seemed like George Pickens was his go-to. It seemed like. I believe he had over 100 yards last week, but with the full week of practice, starting with the starters, you don't truly know until we see a full game, what the offense is going to look like. I mean, Pat Freiermuth, it seemed like was kind of a safety blanket for Pickett, and then he's also able to run. The 2 short rushing touchdowns, which could hurt Najee Harris, and that he's not going to dump the ball off to him in the passing game as much as Ben Roethlisberger did, and he's also potentially going to take some goal line touchdowns like he did last week. So that's a concern, as if Najee was already, underperforming compared to expectations for most. I kind of had these worries coming into the season, just given the changes, and that's kind of coming to fruition. But I mean, it's also possible that Pickett can improve the offense as a whole, which could just kind of help everyone all around compared to, with Trubisky. So, I mean, this is a tough game. The Bills' defense is banged up, but they're still solid. The Bills are a 14-point favorite, so clearly, They're expected to win by quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing to watch in this game will be, how the Steelers offense flows, with the full week of Pickett practicing, with the starters and having a whole game to show what he's got, even though it's gonna be a tough environment and all that.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a huge test for Kenny Pickett. Obviously, true road environment, playing in pretty much one of the loudest stadiums, if not the loudest stadiums in football right now in Buffalo. You mentioned pretty much the run game for the Steelers has not really developed all year, and I don't think it's going to continue with Najee Harris. Just offensive line troubles, and Buffalo can get to the quarterback and bring pressure, and they're going to definitely stack the box with Najee because Kenny Pickett's going to rely on him a lot. You mentioned Pat Freiermuth as well. You mentioned the Bills are a 14-point favorite. I feel like that's for a reason, just because of how this Bills defense really plays at home, especially the last time we saw them at home against Tennessee, where they absolutely beat them down in the second half. And I feel like that's what they're going off of. And I have the Bills winning this game as well, pretty comfortably. I expect a bounce back game for Josh Allen throughout more consistently, along with Stephon Diggs as well on the offensive side of the ball. Moving on to the next game in the morning slate, the Chargers and Browns. Chargers travel to Cleveland. Look, obviously the Chargers have kind of been a team that started off great, but then a bad loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and not a great win, but still a win against the Houston Texans, and now they're playing a team that will run the ball a lot, and is proven to be one of the best running teams in the country, along with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt out the backfield as well for the Browns. Look, obviously, this Chargers team, had a lot of hype coming into the season, and it's not like it's fizzled out. Just a lot of injuries have ruined this Chargers season so far. We mentioned Herbert with his rib injury. I believe Joey Bosa's out for a long time. Keenan Allen has been out for the last couple weeks. And I mean, they're finding the
Rashawn Slater on the offensive line.
Yeah, pretty much. Rashawn Slater, I forgot him on the offensive line. He's out for a long time. And this Browns team, look, they're just waiting for Deshaun Watson to really come back week 13, obviously, after his suspension. And Myles Garrett should be coming back into this starting rotation after, his car accident. Prayers out to him. Thank God for a speedy recovery for him. But, he's projected to be back this week against the Chargers. Look, Ari, I mean, the Browns, they're doing their thing with Jacoby Brissett right now. They suffered a bad loss on the road to Atlanta last week, but they definitely, love playing at home. This Browns team, I feel like, brings pressure defensively. Now that Myles Garrett's back, they still have Jadeveon Clowney still. This defense is still, the pass rush is great, but the secondary, they give up the big explosive plays, and Herbert loves to throw the ball deep. What do you expect offensively for the Chargers and then for the Browns? Is it just going to be ground and pound with Nick Chubb again, or are they going to use Amari Cooper a lot more, especially with the Chargers secondary?
Yeah, I mean, last time Nick Chubb faced the Chargers, he absolutely ran over them, and I'm expecting more of the same. We saw Dameon Pierce broke off the 75-yard rushing touchdown last week against them. And then it's going to be interesting to see with the Chargers offensive line a little bit banged up, going up against, a tough Browns pass rush, assuming that they're healthy. You mentioned last week their win over the Texans. They won. The win's a win, but they almost blew a big lead in that game. And Herbert, he looked better last week than they did the week before against the Jaguars, with his ribs injury, but that's always a risk, if he takes one hit that, it could flare up or whatever. So that's going to be the biggest thing for me is protection for Herbert against the Browns pass rush. And yeah, it's going to be stopping the run for the Chargers against Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They've arguably been, if not the best, the top 3 run offense in the league so far. Behind that offensive line. And yeah, I'm expecting, a little bit more pass heavy from the Chargers and then the usual run heavy offense from the Browns that, we've seen all season. Amari Cooper had a huge game a couple weeks ago. He only caught, I think, one pass last week. So, that kind of inconsistency is kind of expected from him, especially with Jacoby Brissett under center. So, it's hard to trust, but, he's always a decent play just for his upside.
Yeah, I even forgot that game last year where Nick Chubb, when they went down to LA and they just tore up that Chargers rush defense. I feel like it's going to be a similar kind of note this year. You mentioned last week Damian Pierce, first play from scrimmage, he goes 75 yards to the house in the second half. And I feel like the Chargers may have taken the pedal off the gas a little bit after they had opened up a pretty big lead, but still, the Texans really kept themselves in that game for a little bit in the second half. And then the Browns, obviously, they're definitely going to bring the pass rush again. I feel like that's what's going to be a common theme. And then offensively, we'll see what they do. We'll see how Amari Cooper really blossoms in this offense against a pretty good secondary in the Chargers. And obviously, they're missing a little bit of pass rush help with Joey Bosa out now. But, I still feel like the Chargers can definitely bring pressure to the Browns. But definitely, I feel like it's going to be a pound and ground game for Nick Chubb once again. I thought that's going to be the focus on offense for the Browns, and I think the Browns may pull it out, but I feel like the Chargers will definitely give them a good game offensively if Justin Herbert can throw the ball to his receivers well. I feel like, he's really been missing Keenan Allen. And Mike Williams has stepped up in some cases, but I feel like he's definitely missing Keenan Allen right now. So that's going to be a good game on Sunday as well. The next games that we're going to get into is the Bears traveling up to Minnesota to play the Vikings. The Bears, offensively, look, they're a run-heavy team. They are the most run-heavy team right now. I mean, they were missing David Montgomery last week with an injury. Khalil Herbert subbed in, and, he had a pretty decent game, but, that's kind of the lead kind of the lean offensively for the Bears. Definitely just run heavy because, a lot of people were saying that this is going to be a breakout Justin Fields year or that he's going to step up. And then we saw what the Bears did to support him. And then it's like, well, you can't really support him if you're not really giving him any support to give him. So the Bears definitely going to be mostly run heavy against the Vikings. And when the Vikings, look, they're 3-1 right now. They're pretty much on high. They are on high hopes right now after beating the Saints in London last week on a very, very off the double doink. Bears fans remember that one pretty well, but that's beside the point here. Look, the Bears definitely run heavy offense. We know that David Montgomery is probably going to be back this week. That's what the consensus around Chicago is right now. I mean, for the Vikings, obviously, they have one of the best passing attacks in football right now. Justin Jefferson definitely candidate for Offensive Player of the Year. Without surviving all the injuries with Dalvin Cook, they still have Alexander Madison, who runs the ball pretty much similarly to Dalvin Cook. So it's basically a mirror image. They still have Adam Thielen, and that defense has improved at times, but they do give up the big plays. For the Bears, what do you expect offensively, and what do you expect for the Vikings as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Giants to the Bears. It's Montgomery or Herbert starting, and that's about all you can feel comfortable starting. Justin Fields has not taken that step forward that I think, most had hoped. And, Darnell Mooney finally had, one big play last week. I think it was like a 56-yard reception. But, I mean, you can't really rely on that, one big play for him to be a consistent, option. So it's really just who we're starting for the Bears. And then the Vikings, Thielen had a big game recently, and he hasn't really done much outside of that. I mean, you're still starting Dalvin Cook, but he's kind of been disappointing compared to expectations so far. And then you mentioned Jefferson. He's had a couple of, not came up to his standards, but he's still been relatively solid, overall. I think the Vikings should relatively cruise to a relatively easy win in this game. Just too much offense. I don't think the Bears can lean on David Montgomery or Khalil Herbert alone to beat this Vikings offense that has been, pretty much up to expectations so far this season as a whole under Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, I feel like this Vikings offense has really blossomed. Kevin O'Connell, we've talked about it. He's moving from the Rams to a similar offense in the Vikings. With that West Coast style, and I feel like that's what's been, kind of been the lead success for that Vikings offense this year with Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, all those guys offensively for the Vikings. And for the Bears, I mean, you mentioned it. Besides that one, play for Darnell Mooney last week. It was a 50-yard reception. Still really nothing big for him this year or any of the receiving core. I think there's like 5 receivers in the NFL who have more receiving yards than the whole Chicago Bears as a group, as a unit. And that just shows you that this offense is just so run heavy that, I mean, the throwing the ball is like, kind of the last resort for this Bears team. I feel like the Vikings can just easily stop that. If they just stack the box, they can definitely limit the run game as well. And I feel like the Vikings will easily win this game at home against the Bears offense that is just so anemic. But, the Bears defense may keep them in this game. We'll see. But we'll see if they can get to Kirk. But I feel like this is the Vikings win the game as well. And then now we're moving on to the next game. The Lions will be traveling to Foxborough to play the Patriots. Lions coming off one of the highest scoring games of the season, if not the highest scoring game of the season, losing close to the Seahawks at home last week. And then the Patriots obviously losing close on the road to the Green Bay Packers last week. And now they come back home against pretty much the best offense in the league in the Lions. And I feel like the Lions are definitely going to be loving the fact that Amon-Ra St. Brown may be coming back. Same for DeAndre Swift. 2 big offensive weapons for the Lions, and for the Patriots, obviously, they got Billy Zapp. They got Bailey Zapp, baby. It's Bailey Zapp time. That's kind of the theme around Foxborough right now. That Mac Jones went down, and then Brian Hoyer went down early last week against the Patriots. For the Patriots against the Packers, and now they kind of have to rely on Bailey Zapp to kind of lead this team, the rookie out of Western Kentucky from last year, against the Lions defense that has not proven to be, the stars that it has been after, allowing the Seahawks to get 48 points and not have to punt once. Offensively for the Lions, Ari, what do you expect? Obviously, they were missing some key players last week, and now they hopefully get those back this week. And for the Patriots, obviously they have Bailey Zapp as their starting quarterback, and we've only seen a little bit of him, but he was able to keep it close in a close competitive match against Green Bay. What do you expect from these two teams?
Yeah, on the Lions side, it's already announced this morning that DeAndre Swift's not going to be playing this week. They have their bye next week, so they want to kind of keep him on the sideline, through the bye week, just to get him fully healthy. And then, Amon-Ra St. Brown might return this week, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do the same route with him, where they keep him, off the field through the bye week. But I mean, Jamal Williams, is a fine starter with Swift's sideline. He's a borderline RB1 in fantasy, with the volume he sees with Swift's sidelines. And then if Amon-Ra is out again, we saw Josh Reynolds step up big last week against the Seahawks, and I like him a lot as well. As a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 flex play if Amon-Ra is out again, and especially if DJ Shark is out again. But if Amon-Ra is out. And then, I think it's all about the running game for the Patriots against the Lions that are arguably the worst run defense in the league. I think we're going to see a lot of Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. With Bailey Zappi, it's kind of hard to trust Patriots receivers. Jacoby Myers may or may not be playing this week. He's kind of questionable right now. But, even if he plays, I think he's just a super, super desperate PPR flex play. We saw them run the ball a lot against the Packers last week, with Zappi in their center. He had the one, touchdown to Devontae Parker where he was, wide open in that corner. But, I don't think you can really trust any Patriots receivers, at this point. I think both running backs are startable, in Harris and Stevenson.
Yeah, I pretty much would say the same thing. If you look at it offensively, it's going to be a run-heavy game for this Patriots offense. They have Bailey Zapp, as we mentioned, just starting his first game, and there's a lot of pressure there, and you're definitely going to rely on his running backs, Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris, to really lead the charge offensively for the Patriots. And then you mentioned, obviously, for the Lions, definitely already missing DeAndre Swift, but you mentioned the bye is already next week, so just kind of extra rest for both of them, and potentially Amon-Ra St. Brown as well. But definitely, I feel like this is going to be just pretty much to see whether the offense of the Patriots can really stack up, or if the Lions offense is just going to be an offensive shootout. Definitely one of the more intriguing games offensively, just to see what the Lions do to bounce back defensively against the Patriots. But Lions have the worst run defense right now in football, and Rashad Penny exposed them last week, and I feel like Damian Harris will do the same thing this week. So I feel like this is going to be a very run-heavy game for the Patriots as well, and potentially for the offense. For the Lions, just Jared Goff, kind of leading that charge, finding his receivers like T.J. Hawkinson. He was his number one target last week. There's also Josh Reynolds potentially. DJ Chark may return as well. So definitely some big names potentially coming back for the Lions this coming week as well. Moving on to the next game here, we have the early matchup. Not early for Seahawks fans. It's early 10 a.m. matchup. Seahawks will travel down to New Orleans to play the Saints. Seahawks coming off a big win last week against the Lions. Offensive shootout. Geno Smith, Offensive Player of the Week. Yeah, Geno Smith, NFC Offensive Player of the Week. Who would have thought we've been saying that in 2022? And then for the Saints, they came off a close loss, as I mentioned, in London against the Vikings on the road. Well, on the road, even though it was in London. But now they come back to New Orleans. Familiar place. Michael Thomas is still questionable for this Saints team. I believe Alvin Kamara will be coming back on Sunday, so that's a big get for them. I don't know the health status of Jameis Winston, but I'm assuming that if he's not able to go, it's another Andy Dalton show for them. And I mean, we saw what he's doing. I mean, he's a backup now, and he's pretty limited. So it's just, we're gonna see what the Saints do offensively. They rely heavily on their defense. Their defensive team. Tyrann Mathieu can still, is still in the secondary. They still have a pretty good defense. For the Seahawks, obviously the defense is kind of one of the more bigger questions. Obviously last week they had a pretty big shoot. They've had back-to-back shootouts recently. First with the Falcons at home, they allowed, I think it was like 30-something points, and then 40-plus points to this Lions offense. And so it's kind of, a question of what this defense is going to do. It was nice to see Tariq Woolen, the rookie, get a pick six off of Jared Goff last week. We'll see what he can do with potentially Andy Dalton or Jameis Winston this week. Ari, look, Seahawks fans know that this is not supposed to be a win, but, it could be depending on what's going on with New Orleans. What do you hope for the Seahawks as a personal Seahawks fan, and what do you see from the Seahawks offense that, is putting up points against it's kind of crazy to think that the offense is not the problem, but the defense is. And last year, it was the offense that was the problem. So now to see the defense is definitely, one of the problems. What do you expect from there? And then for the Saints, obviously they were missing Alvin Kamara last week. He was not a late scratch, but a lot of the people on the West Coast or in the United States didn't really know that he was going to be out early, and so they couldn't really set their lineups really well. What do you expect from the Saints as well?
Yeah, you said Kamara's expected to return this week. It's not looking great. Last I saw, for Winston and Thomas, based off the reports from Wednesday. We're recording this Thursday morning, so there's still a Thursday and Friday practice. So, they're not ruled out, but it sounds like they're trending, not the right direction as of Wednesday. So that's kind of what I'm assuming right now is it's going to be another Dalton to Olave, type of game. I like Olave a lot, especially if Thomas is out. I mean, we saw him catch a touchdown last week, and I think against the Seahawks secondary, he can definitely do a lot, even with Dalton. But I mean, I like the Seahawks' chances if Winston and Thomas are both out again. Definitely not going to have the same offensive success against the Saints defense, without a doubt. I think that they can do enough to take down, Andy Dalton. It's an amazing to see, probably DK Metcalf seeing a lot of Marshall Lattimore. We saw this matchup last year. Geno started against the Saints last year, and I think that was when Metcalf had that 80-yard touchdown or something like that. I think he threw it. Lattimore went for the pick and he missed, and Metcalf was gone after that to the end zone. The Seahawks lost a close one against the Saints last year with Geno Smith, but Geno definitely seems to have more confidence, this year than he did last year when he came in for Russell Wilson. Rashad Penny mentioned had a huge game last week, a much tougher run defense in the Saints, so we'll see how he looks. I'm hoping to see them mixing a lot more Kenneth Walker. They kind of keep, the Saints off balance with their kind of mix of play styles. And then, if Lattimore is all over Metcalf, then we should see a lot of Tyler Lockett. We're seeing a lot of the tight ends involved, in Disley, Parkinson, and Fant, with Geno Smith. So, he's spreading the ball around quite a bit, and, he's able to, if he needs to. So I'm looking forward to this game on Sunday, and, we'll see if Winston and Thomas can return or if they're going to miss another game for the Saints.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I even forgot to mention the DK Metcalf Marshawn Lattimore matchup that's going to happen on Sunday. That matchup's pretty spicy. DK is probably feeling himself after last week in the press conference he was talking about Jeffrey Okudah. How he's not that great of a corner, and he exposed him. He had over 140 receiving yards. So we'll see how he does this week. I even forgot that Geno Smith did start that game last year where the Seahawks hosted the Saints last year. And, you mentioned that 80-yard touchdown that DK Metcalf had at the start, and then it kind of just fizzled out offensively from there. So we'll see how Geno Smith will do now that he has, playing a more experienced defense that he faced before, but now they bring in Tyrann Mathieu still. So this is definitely going to be a matchup with the Seahawks offense against the Saints defense. I feel like if the Seahawks defense is facing, no Jameis Winston, no Alvin Kamara, and no Michael Thomas, and I feel like they have a pretty good shot as well. But that brings into question, where do you want to see the Seahawks team finish at the end of the season? Because right now this team is 2-2 definitely in a division where everyone is pretty mid. Honestly, I mean everyone in this division is 2-2, and with one win or one loss, you can either be at the top or the bottom. So definitely going to be interesting to see what the Seahawks do Sunday, but I feel like it's going to be a really close matchup offensively for that Seahawks offense against the Saints defense, who's going to give them trouble, and then vice versa. We'll see what the Saints offense is dealing with, if they are dealing with the injuries or not. That's Sunday morning as well. And then continuing with the Sunday slate, we have the Dolphins traveling up to New York to play the Jets. Obviously no Tua for this game after all the controversy that happened after last week. I've seen so many reports about how Tua should just call it a career, and how the amount of brain damage he suffered is just so much, and it's just a sad story to see from just a young quarterback in this league who was really just getting his feet under himself. But that's unfortunate beside the point. So no Tua for this Dolphins. No Tua for this Dolphins offense. Once again, they have to rely on Teddy Bridgewater to lead the charge. And then for the Jets, they got they got the Cougar Hunter back in Zach Wilson last week, and he definitely played pretty comfortably within himself. He made some decent passes to keep him in that game, but they definitely ended up with the win against the Steelers on the road. Big win for them, and now they host a Dolphins team that is kind of under a new identity now with Teddy Bridgewater. Kind of limited to see how Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle do. They were kind of, I believe they're the leading receivers in the NFL right now, just in terms of receiving yards. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how this passing attack will continue now for the Dolphins, now that they have Teddy Bridgewater under center instead of Tua Tagovailoa. Ari, the offense of the Dolphins definitely is going to be going under a change pretty much throughout the next coming weeks, heading in maybe into a deeper part of the regular season. And then you look at the Jets, and their defense is kind of keeping them in games, and their offense is moving down the field methodically. We see what Zach Wilson did, throwing to Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, using the run game a little bit with Breece Hall, and all of that. What do you expect from this game? I've been seeing a lot of people say that this one is a circled upset for the Jets this week. Are you fine with that, or what do you expect for the Dolphins and Jets offensively?
Yeah, I mean, we saw Teddy Bridgewater step in, and he was fine. He almost led them to the win over the Bengals last week. Obviously, he's a veteran, so he's able to step in and at least be serviceable. He found Tyreek Hill on that deep pass where he bobbled a couple of times, and he ended up catching it. So I think the offense definitely does take a hit, losing Tua, but not to the point where I think there should be too much panic or concern. And then on the Jets side, we saw them start to use Breece Hall more last week. So we'll see if that continues. And then you mentioned Zach Wilson, he wasn't great, but it was also his first game back, in a tougher matchup. And the Dolphins defense has been relatively solid this year, so it's not an easy matchup by any means. But he's at home this week, so I definitely think the Jets have a legit chance. As long as they don't turn the ball over. And kind of if they can continue to get Brees Hall going, that would be big as well. I think he saw a career high in carries last week, I believe. So they're kind of starting to shift more towards Brees Hall over Michael Carter, though they both still have a role. And then we're seeing all three: Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, and Garrett Wilson targeted, like you mentioned. So yeah, I mean, I think the Jets definitely have a fair chance in this game. I still probably lean the Dolphins, but I had the Jets beating the Steelers last week, and I might get a last second change of heart in this game, but we'll see.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. It may be a last second change of heart for me as well. But I mean, look, you see this Dolphins team now under Teddy Bridgewater, and he threw some good passes to both Tyreek and Jalen Waddle late last week against the Cincinnati Bengals in the loss. And then you look at the Jets, and they were okay, offensively. It wasn't like the greatest offensive game against a matchup with a harder defense than the Steelers defense. But you look at the Jets offense, and it was pretty standard, moving down the field methodically. That would be interesting to see how the Jets really handle themselves. I feel like you mentioned it. I feel like if they limit the turnovers, I feel like this is going to go in the Jets' favor. But, well, you never know with the Dolphins. I mean, if they can rely on on Tua to really lead this team, then why not? I feel like the sky is the limit for this Dolphins offense. But definitely going to be interesting to see how they use Teddy Bridgewater this coming week. I feel like we're going to be seeing a lot more of him, potentially more run game as well. We forgot to mention, I mean, they still have Raheem Mostert. They still have that duo with Mostert and Edmonds, They still have a pretty deep running back committee as well. So definitely a lot more run game as well. We'll see how the Dolphins do when they travel up to New York this week. Next game we want to get into here, I think we're still in the morning slate. I feel like we're still in the morning slate here. The Falcons travel down to Tampa Bay to play the Buccaneers. For the Falcons, they come off a win. Bucs are coming off a bad loss at home to the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. Recently, Tom Brady just entered the Bucs a long list of injury status. He's been dealing with not only injuries on the field but off the field with a divorce pending. There's so much drama with that. So definitely going to be interesting to see how Brady comes on Sunday, if he is playing on Sunday against this Falcons team that he pretty much has owned ever since that Super Bowl. And then for the Falcons, obviously they're coming off a big win against the Browns at home, but they did lose Cordell Patterson, so a lot of fantasy owners picked up Tyler Algier. Maybe we'll see a lot more of him in the backfield this coming week. Kyle Pitts has definitely been one bigger question for this Falcons offense. Drake London has stepped up in games, but last week was pretty quiet. Ari, when you look at this Falcons-Bucs game, obviously you want to pick the Bucs just because the history Tom Brady knows, and this is a divisional matchup, and Tom Brady knows how to pretty much beat this team every time he faces them. What do you expect from the Falcons offensively? And then for the Bucs, I mean, if they don't have Tom Brady this Sunday, I mean, obviously there's questions on what Blaine Gabbert will do, but what do you like to see from the Bucs in a bounce back potentially against the Falcons?
Yeah, so Brady returned to practice today as of this morning, or I guess afternoon, in Florida. So he should be fine, for Sunday. They also had, Godwin and Julio at practice. So it seems like they're pretty close to being fully healthy at this point, which is good for Brady in that offense. The Falcons, you mentioned, the backfield, losing Cordell Patterson is big. On paper, Tyler Algier should be the lead back, but we also saw Caleb Huntley and an even amount last week. And then they get Damian Williams back, potentially off IR next week. So this could be a pretty, crowded backfield that's kind of hard to trust. And then you mentioned Pitts. I mean, he had the one big game against the Seahawks. And then outside of that, the other 3 games, he's hardly even been targeted. So, it's hard to know, what to expect. I mean, we know we know the talent and we know what he can do when he gets the ball, but we can only do so much if Mario's not even looking his way. You mentioned Drake London had a quiet game last week, but he's still been relatively solid overall on the season. London seems like the number one, for Mariota, even with Pitts. And this is a tough matchup for the Falcons offense as well. So, and I'm not expecting too much from them, against Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay. I think the Bucs cruise pretty easily. We saw last week, Fournette only saw 3 carries, so that's something to monitor. But that's also, I think, partially because they are down big early against the Chiefs. I think that should get back on track with Fournette, seeing a good amount of carries this week against Atlanta, where the Bucs, should have the lead for most, if not all, of the game.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I feel like with the Bucs, obviously you could point to the lack of a running game, but they were down by so much to the Chiefs that they definitely got to throw the ball to get back in the game, and that's what kind of Brady did. Or excuse me, that's what Brady did to kind of get them back in that game. You also mentioned, Pitts, London, and that whole offense for the Falcons. Definitely big boomer bust most weeks. Kyle Pitts had that one big week against the Seahawks, and then he quieted down. And Drake London has had a quiet week, but he's been kind of a favorite receiver from Marcus Mariota this season. But for the Bucs, obviously, I just feel like Tom Brady, now that he has a familiar receiver and Chris Godwin coming back, probably this week. Then Julio probably coming back as well. He still has Mike Evans. I still feel like it's definitely one of the best offenses in football right now. I mean, you look at that receiving core, and then yes, Fournette didn't have that much on the ground, but he still ended up having a receiving touchdown, and he was kind of the leading receiving back as well. So I feel like the Bucs should definitely cruise on for a win this week against the Falcons. Continuing on to our next game here, we have the Titans going to Washington to play the Commanders, and oh brother, what an ugly game this is going to be. Oh God, I mean, the Commanders, they came off one of the worst offensive weeks they've ever had in Dallas. They just couldn't find anything. Carson Wentz in Dallas it's just not good, and I feel like that continued this week. Carson Wentz struggled throughout his time, and really couldn't develop an offense. Right now, there's rumors that Brian Robinson will have some role when he comes back after he's eligible to come off IR soon. After that horrible incident of him being shot earlier before the season even started. So we'll see how that affects Gibson. And then obviously one of the bigger questions has been Terry McLaurin, obviously not really getting that many targets. Carson Wentz has been really throwing the ball to Curtis Samuel a lot more. Jahan Dotson, I feel like I believe he's questionable, and I don't think he will be playing this Sunday. But so that's a big loss for that Commanders offense. And then you look at the Titans, and obviously they came off a big win against the Colts last week, kind of turning around their season. Derrick Henry, went back to good old Derrick Henry form, running the ball well, pounding ground on the ground. And I feel like that's going to continue against this Commanders defense. Ari, what do you think? I mean, obviously, I feel like the Titans just rely on Derrick Henry so much that I feel like, they kind of have to rely on him. Obviously, Robert Woods kind of be the lead receiver after Traylon Burks is, I believe, not playing on Sunday as well. So that's a big loss for that Titans receiving core, the rookie out of Arkansas. And then for the Commanders, just so many problems defensively. And then offensively, Carson Wentz can't really do it all. And, their run game is kind of in question with Antonio Gibson now. What do you expect from this game offensively for the Titans and the Commanders?
Yeah, the last 2 weeks against the Eagles and the Cowboys, I think the Eagles was 2 games ago, I think. The offensive line just hasn't given Carson Wentz any time against both of those pass rushers, so that has been the difference. After the first couple of weeks, Wentz, put up a lot, was really solid the first couple of weeks. I don't think the Titans pass rush will be as much of a problem, as the Eagles and Cowboys were, I don't believe. But with how bad the offensive line is, you never really know. I think, there's going to be an ugly game, like you said. I think Derrick Henry will be the difference, in who wins the game. I think the Titans will win a pretty ugly one here, led by a pretty big game from Derrick Henry. But I mean, if Wentz can get any sort of protection, I think he should be able to have a bounce back after back-to-back, abysmal weeks. But I'm a little bit more confident in the Titans offense right now. Tannehill has been at least somewhat decent enough, last couple of weeks. They had the big divisional win over the Colts last week. I think they're going to do just enough to beat the Commanders here this week.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like this is going to be an ugly game, but if the Commanders can get any sort of protection for Carson Wentz, I feel like they definitely have a good chance at this game. I mean, you look at the Titans; it's just going to be ground and pound with Derrick Henry. He runs through pretty much anyone on the defense, and I feel that's what's going to be kind of leading the charge for this Titans team. It's going to be an ugly game, but I feel like the Titans will hold on in the end and get the win over the Commanders in Washington this week. Continuing with our morning slate. I believe this is the final game of the morning slate. The Houston Texans travel to Jacksonville to play the Jaguars, the red-hot Jaguars, even though they suffered a loss last week to the Philadelphia Eagles on the road in a pretty windy, stormy game. James Robinson wasn't used that much. Trevor Lawrence tried to get them back in that game, with goal line passes to Jamal Agnew. Didn't we get to see much Travis Etienne as well, but I believe the Jaguars have a bounce-back game offensively. The Eagles' offense is just pretty much just too powerful, honestly. I feel like the Eagles' offense is kind of the reason as to why the Jaguars, just couldn't really get themselves into their own foot. They had a nice 14-0 lead to start, but then the Eagles' offense started clicking, and then it was kind of history from there. And then you look at the Texans, and they started out slow, but then Dameon Pierce 75-yard run, and Davis Mills getting himself under his own foot. I feel like the Texans finished strong, even though they lost on the road at home. Against the Chargers. Still the only winless team in football, the Houston Texans. Look, Ari, offensively, what do you like from this Texans offense? We talked about Dameon Pierce a little earlier. His breakout run for 75 yards last week. I don't know if we'll see anything like that coming this week, and then. For the Jaguars, obviously, look, Doug Peterson's doing a pretty solid job leading that charge down there. Trevor Lawrence is throwing the ball a lot more consistently. And, he has a better receiving core now. Marvin Jones, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, has starting to emerge. He had a big 50-yard reception last week against the Eagles. What do you like in this game between a Jaguars offense that has kind of resurged and the defense? I mean, the Jaguars defense is doing really well right now. What do you expect What do you expect them to do against a Houston Texans offense that try to come back against a pretty good Chargers defense?
Yeah, I mean, after he showed flashes last year, Davis Mills has not looked the best so far this season. And, that's led to Brandon Cooks, being disappointing. So, I mean, it's really just Dameon Pierce is the only, true threat for Houston right now. And on the other side, they have a plethora, of weapons that have been solid this year. I think James Robinson and Christian Kirk will both be better this week against Houston. We'll see what kind of role Travis Etienne has, behind James Robinson. I think we can see both of them utilized a bit this week. And then, with Zay Jones is out last week, which led to Agnew having the 2 touchdowns. I think Zay Jones is on track to likely being back, barring any setback, so that should help the Jaguars offense as well. I like Trevor Lawrence as a potential streamer in fantasy this week if you're struggling at quarterback. I think Jaguars offense should have their way against the Texans defense, and they should be able to do enough to stop Dameon Pierce, and the Texans offense to be able to come away with a win.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I feel like this Texans offense is, not really got themselves under their own foot. You mentioned Davis Mills has not really taken that next step from year 1 to year 2, and I also that's led to a regression for Brandon Cooks. And Dameon Pierce is kind of the lead back now, obviously for the Houston Texans. But I feel like you're leading the charge where it's just not really getting their own foot under themselves. The defense is not good as well. And then for the Jaguars, they definitely have an improved offense and improved defense. I feel like the Jaguars, they'll definitely have a bounce back week after the loss against the Eagles last week for them. But I feel like this is definitely going to be a more offensive game for the Jacksonville Jaguars as well. They're definitely going to be using a lot more James Robinson, in my opinion. Christian Kirk will see a lot more yards. You mentioned Zay Jones coming back. That will be a big grab for this offense of the Jaguars. Missing him last week, so I feel like the Jaguars will probably easily win this game against the Texans at home. Now moving into finally the afternoon slate. It seems like all those are in the mornings. Now we have the afternoon slate. We have the 49ers going to the Panthers this week. And the Panthers, look, they have so many troubles right now. Offensively, Baker Mayfield is not the guy. They're trying to find something to do. Christian McCaffrey, he was injured for a little bit, but, luckily he was able to play, but it's not like it really made a huge difference. They still lost to the Arizona Cardinals at home last week, and now they have an improved 49ers defense. And, the Niners are pretty much one of the scariest teams in football. They just come off a big Monday night win against the Rams last week, where, they really limited Matthew Stafford in that Rams offense to pretty much no touchdowns at all. And then the Niners offense, Deebo Samuel had a breakout game. They're still going to reuse him heavily. They love using Deebo Samuel in all positions. They still have, a pretty decent run game, even with all the injuries that have kind of plagued them throughout the backfield, and no Trent Williams right now. They still can get it done with Jimmy G. Ari, look, obviously the Panthers are kind of struggling offensively right now with Baker Mayfield, and they kind of have to rely on CMC a lot more. And then for the Niners, you look at the success that they had last week continuing into this week. I feel like the Niners should definitely have this easy win in the bag for them, just because they're definitely the better team on both sides of the ball. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the Niners, are going to roll in this game pretty easily. Their pass rush, we saw what they did against Stafford last week. They should get to Baker Mayfield pretty easily in this game. McCaffrey is the only guy you can feel comfortable starting at this point, on that offense. And then I like just about every 49ers offensive weapon. We saw George Kittle blocked a lot last week against the Rams pass rush. I think he might see a bigger role in the receiving game than this week, just because I don't have to worry quite as much about the Panthers pass rush compared to, the Rams. We still see Jeff Wilson have a pretty big game. Obviously, Debo, you're starting every week in fantasy. Ayuk, I think, have a pretty big game. I think, they're going to be up most of the game, if not, the entire game. And then the defense should put them in pretty good positions to be able to score as well. I think the 49ers are going to roll, pretty easily in this game. And, pretty much every main offensive weapon for the 49ers can be started in fantasy. And then the Panthers, you can't not start McCaffrey. Like, he's going to see the volume despite the tough matchup. But, it's hard to expect him to have any sort of huge blow-up game unless he can break off a big play or somehow score 2 touchdowns or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like the Niners offense, is definitely just better than the Panthers right now. Niners, obviously they lost Trey Lance, but kind of a blessing in disguise the way Jimmy G's been, just easily handling this offense in his absence. 2-2 record, and moving potentially on the 3-2 if they beat the Panthers this Sunday. But the Panthers, obviously, they definitely struggle offensively. Baker Mayfield is just not him. Christian McCaffrey, he's doing so much with what he's kind of given right now, and it's kind of hesitant to start him with all the injuries that he has and his injury history and stuff like that. And the Niners pass rush will easily be getting to Baker Mayfield, potentially creating turnovers, which the Niners thrive on right now. So I feel like the Niners will definitely easily win this game as well, in what should be a pretty one-sided game, in my opinion. Moving on later in the afternoon slate, we have the Cowboys, Dallas going to Los Angeles to visit the Rams, and the Rams are coming. Both teams did not look super impressive last week. The Cowboys defensively look like the best team in the country right now, and the Rams, they struggled offensively. It'll be interesting to see a Cooper Kupp versus Trayvon Diggs matchup. We'll see how really good Trayvon Diggs really is. Now that he's probably going to be matched up against the best receiver in football right now, in Cooper Kupp, arguably one of the best. And look, the Rams defense will definitely be trying to get to that offense The Cowboys have obviously have been known for their offensive line, and they're going to try and definitely double, triple team Aaron Donald the best that they can. But I feel like this is going to be a bounce back game for the Rams. Obviously, the Niners always have their number, and I feel like that's kind of just the reason why the Rams lost last week. And I feel like they'll just bounce back and get this big win at home against the Cowboys, who will not have Dak. I believe he is still injured and just not even ready to grip a football. So he's going to be out for a longer amount of time than they anticipated. But that's beside the point. I feel like this Rams team, they're still good. They're just having a little bit of a Super Bowl slump right now, but they'll get the Suns under their own foot. And I feel like this is the week to do it. Bounce back week against an offense that has proven to be beaten, and then the defense that is definitely one of the best in the country. That's going to be the matchup, Rams offense versus the Cowboys defense. Ari, what do you expect from this matchup?
No, yeah, I'm with you in that regard. I think Cooper Rush gets his first loss as a starter in this game. We'll see how the Cowboys passers can get to Stafford, though, because that's clearly a big struggle is the Rams offensive line, as we saw against the 49ers last week. So I don't think it's going to be, an easy game by any means against that pass rush of Dallas. But I think they're going to do just enough offensively to be able to beat Cooper Rush, in the Cowboys offense. I think it's going to be a bounce back game for the defense because, like you said, they don't match up historically well against the 49ers, under Shanahan and McVay. But I think the defense is going to be better in this game, against Cooper Rush. And then I think the offense, will be better as well, though, I don't think it's going to be super easy. I think the Rams win, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be a relatively close game throughout most of the way. I think it's probably going to be a little bit lower scoring, most likely. But, yeah, I like the Rams to pull away, with this one.
I agree with you. I think Cooper Rush will get his first loss of the season. I like – definitely the bigger matchup is to see how the Rams offensive line will protect Matthew Stafford against, that pass rush of the Cowboys that leads the league in sacks right now. Micah Parsons having a great season, definitely defensive player of the year candidate as well. Trayvon Diggs in the secondary. I feel like they'll definitely get to the quarterback, but it's just a matter of how Cooper Rush will do offensively against a Rams pass rush that has always been good. And then the secondary, we'll see how CeeDee Lamb does against Jalen Ramsey on the side of the ball. So, we talked about Cooper Kupp versus Trayvon Diggs. Now you can see Jalen Ramsey versus CeeDee Lamb. So get your popcorn out for that game this weekend. Definitely going to be a good game. I feel like the Rams will definitely bounce back in this game just because I feel like the Niners always have the number. And I don't think this Rams team will definitely be losing back-to-back, especially at home against a Cowboys offense that, does not have their leader right now in Dak Prescott. But definitely can still win them some games off on the defense side of the ball. So I definitely think the Cowboys will struggle offensively, but it's definitely going to be a low-scoring game, as you said. But I feel like the Rams will prevail in the end. Moving on to the final game in the afternoon slate, the Eagles, the undefeated 4-0 Eagles, head down to Arizona to play the Cardinals. And look, the Cardinals, they come off a big win last week when they defeated the Panthers on the road. And now they come back and play pretty much one of the better teams, if not the best team in football, in the Eagles. And, good old battle of the Oklahoma QBs for a little bit, Jalen Hurts versus Kyler Murray. Definitely a good match. Jalen Hurts definitely ascended himself. That was one of the bigger questions is, how Jalen Hurts is going to play this year. And, he's playing above, expectations. So good to see out of him. And, definitely a big step up for that offense. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Miles Sanders is still finding himself. He's having a decent year. And the offense of the Cardinals has definitely been up and down all around. Kyler Murray looks good at times, but that's only when I believe what was that crazy stat there? He's 53-0 when I think it was something to do I think with gaming. So it's just a stupid gaming stat, but that's beside the point. I feel like Kyler Murray, just shows his he uses his feet so much and his mobility, and I feel like that kind of contributes to how he wins games. And James Conner, he's definitely taken a little bit of a back step this year after his touchdown dependent year this year. The Cardinals are still looking to a couple more weeks to get D-Hop back. He should be coming back in the next coming weeks as well. So Ari, look, you have the Eagles, best team in football, have not lost a game yet, 4-0. Cardinals 2-2. Defense is still for the Cardinals still decent, but still a big question. What do you like from this game offensively for the Eagles and Cardinals?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the Cardinals offensively are just waiting to get Hopkins back. Obviously a win is a win, but their 2 wins over the Raiders and the Panthers have not been, the most convincing by any means. Eagles, you mentioned the last undefeated team in the league. They looked the part on both sides of the ball. So I think they're going to be too much, for the Cardinals. I think the offense will be better for Arizona when they get Hopkins back. Having another receiver like Hopkins to the mix. Marquise Brown's had a pretty solid start to the season. I'm looking for a little bit more from James Conner, though the volume hasn't really been there either. He's been a little bit banged up as well. But he should be healthy now. And then on the Eagles side, Miles Sanders has been, really solid so far. AJ Brown has, he stepped right in as a wide receiver 1, looked great so far with Jalen Hurts. And Hurts himself has stepped up as a passer as well as a runner, in both avenues. So I think the Eagles' undefeated run, will continue in this game. Cardinals are just not going to have enough offensively, to take down the Eagles. And then, even defensively, I don't really see them slowing down this offense too much in Philadelphia. So I think the Eagles will travel to, Arizona and, defeat them pretty handily on Sunday.
Yeah, you mentioned the 2 wins for the Cardinals are against the bad Panthers team on the road and then a struggling Raiders team who just got their first win last week. And look, those are a win's a win, but at the same time, you can't really credit it as a solid win. And now they have the toughest opponent to the season yet when they play a Eagles team that is red hot right now. And I feel like the Eagles will just come in, continue that success, and that'll lead to another win for the Eagles. I feel like this Eagles team offensively will just outmatch the Cardinals with Jalen Hurts, playing well and, throwing the ball to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith well. Dallas Goedert's been used really well, has been used as well really well. So I feel like this is just an Eagles setup. I just don't think the Eagles can match up well against this. No, I don't think the Cardinals, can match up well offensively against an Eagles offense that is just passing attack all day. We'll see how the Cardinals have to respond, obviously, but it's going to be hard for this Cardinals offense to really get them on their own foot when they didn't really have a solid passing attack. As I mentioned earlier, they're just waiting for D-Hop to come back offensively, and then they'll get their offense to spark back. But for now, definitely more of a defensive game mindset for the Cardinals. But they're playing the number 1 passing attack, in my opinion, in the Eagles. And I feel like this is going to be too much for that Cardinals defense to handle. So I feel like the Eagles are definitely going to win this game. Heading into the intriguing Sunday night matchup between the Bengals and Ravens. Ravens hosting the Bengals. Great divisional matchup. The AFC North is definitely one of the more, intriguing divisions just in terms of, just the energy that it gives out. Joe Burrow and that Bengals team coming off a big win last week against the Miami Dolphins to end their undefeated streak, and now have to play the Ravens, who just unfortunately blew that huge lead last week to the Bills at home. And now they have another home game where they're playing a team that they know really well, a good passing attack in the Bengals. Joe Burrow, they kind of found themselves, Jamar Chase, still definitely one of the top receivers in football. T. Higgins is doing his thing. They still have Tyler Boyd. Joe Mixon is still doing his thing on offense. They still have a very solid offense for the Bengals. Ravens, obviously, they lean heavily on Lamar Jackson. Great to see J.K. Dobbins have a really good week last week in his first real week back in playing football. They still have Rashad Bateman as the number 1 receiver right now, and he's playing really well. Ari, look. This is an intriguing battle because the Bengals have played Lamar Jackson for years, and Lamar Jackson always runs through them. And for the Bengals, obviously, it's definitely passing with a little bit more of Joe Mixon in the backfield. What do you expect from this game offensively from both teams? What would you like to see from the Bengals offensively, how did the Ravens respond after last week when they blew that horrible lead?
Yeah, I mean, I saw an insane stat the other day where, they have the 2 losses against the Bills and the Dolphins, and they trailed a total of 14 seconds combined in those 2 losses. So both of them were, complete breakdowns. They're up big, and both of them they just blew late. And so, and the Bengals, you mentioned coming off, a pretty big win over the Dolphins, and then the Jets. So they're kind of getting back on track. I want to take the Bengals, but I think these 2 teams split the series. I think the Ravens take this at home, and the Bengals later, take their game at home against Baltimore. But it should be a pretty exciting game, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Ravens respond after blowing this 20-3 lead last week, and then the Bengals coming off, a pretty big win, like I said, against the Dolphins. So, I mean, the Bengals have more of the momentum right now. But, it's in Baltimore, which isn't easy to place to play. But, they blew the lead in Baltimore against the Bills last week. So we'll see how both teams respond off, a big win and a heartbreaking loss, for the Ravens against the Bills. But, yeah, I mean, it should be a pretty fun divisional, Sunday night game between these 2 teams. I think it should come down to the wire.
I agree with you, too. I feel like this game is something to come down to the wire. You look at this Bengals team, right? They come off a big win against the Dolphins at home, and you mentioned that crazy stat for the Ravens. They've only been down for a total of 14 seconds in the 2 games that they've lost in, which is absolutely ridiculous. So you mentioned just a total collapse on the defense side of the ball. And, there's just been so many frictions in that locker room. I mean, Marcus Peters, was jawing, or was it Marlon Humphrey? I forgot who it was. Someone was jawing at John Harbaugh. And John Harbaugh had some words to say in the press conference. So, there's a lot of friction in that locker room right now defensively, which could, the Bengals would love to capitalize on. But I feel this is going to come down to the wire. Definitely a more offensive game between the 2 teams, and I feel like the Ravens may hold this one out at home just because that Ravens do have the home field advantage, and I feel like when it goes back up to Cincinnati, that the Bengals will win round 2 of that divisional matchup. And I feel like these 2 teams are pretty much the leaders of the division right now and will continue to lead the division. And I feel like both teams are still going to be playoff teams this year, in my opinion. Excuse me. Now we're heading into the final game of the Week 5 slate, Monday Night Football on this coming Monday. The Raiders will travel to Kansas City to play the Chiefs. The last time the Raiders played in Kansas City, they did that whole celebration in the middle, saying we got this, and tearing up the Chiefs field, and doing all that nonsense, and then they lost so embarrassingly that they forgot that they even put that on the field. So, look, the Raiders definitely coming off of a big win that they kind of needed to save their season. They started off 0-3, and then they got their first win against Mr. Let's Cook, Mr. Unlimited himself. I just love saying that just to mock him. But they got their first win at home against the Denver Broncos, and now they got to play pretty much one of the better teams in the country in Kansas City, who had a great win against a good Bucs team on the road in the Super Bowl rematch from a couple of years ago against Tampa Bay. Look, Ari, the Raiders offensively have really not found themselves yet. I feel like Derek Carr has been decent, but not taken that next level with Devontae Adams yet, and I feel like the chemistry still needs to be worked out. And then for the Chiefs, they just look like the best team in football right now. I mean, offensively, Patrick Mahomes is still one of the best quarterbacks in football. He's throwing the ball well. He's using all of his options. He still has Travis Kelce, his favorite receiver. We've seen a lot more of Clyde Edwards-Helaire used a lot more now, especially out of the backfield. We've seen Isaiah Pacheco used, the rookie. Great to see him being used a lot more. What do you expect from this Monday night game? Obviously, I have the Raiders just obviously not really winning this game at all. I have the Chiefs dominating at home. But what do you have in this game?
No, yeah, I mean, Mahomes is, unreal, as we all know. That one touchdown pass to Clyde Edwards-Helaire last week where he spun at the one, then flipped it over to him last second was, just classic Mahomes. The Chiefs offense is going to be too much for the Raiders. I think the Raiders can put up some points, against the Chiefs defense and, not make it a huge blowout. But, the Chiefs offense, Mahomes, clearly they have not lost a beat. Losing Tyreek Hill. He spreads the ball around just fine. Kelsey first, and then the others as well. The Chiefs are going to be too strong, especially at home in this Monday night game. I think the Raiders are going to put up points to make it not a huge blowout, but the Chiefs should roll relatively easily.
I agree with you. Mahomes. I mean, he's been doing this since he came into the league and has been starting, and I feel like it just continues to just amaze the fans and his teammates and Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy and that coaching staff in Kansas City. And I feel like Mahomes is just going to keep doing what he does, and it's going to lead to another win for the Chiefs. And I feel like the Chiefs will easily beat the Raiders at home. Raiders have struggled to really stop the big plays, and have just really struggled offensively so far. And now they have their first win under their belt. I feel like the Chiefs will just humble them, and the Raiders will just go 1-4. But this Chiefs team is definitely, a lot of people are saying that now that they lost Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes is going to throw the ball to, and he obviously found all of his targets. So I feel like the Chiefs will easily beat the Raiders at home, and what should be a pretty one-sided Monday Night Football matchup, in my opinion. But that's been the whole Week 5 slate for you. All 15 games, all 16 games in order from tonight's Thursday matchup all the way to Monday's. Ari, do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I think that was good for this episode. I don't think we'll go live tomorrow, but we'll probably be live on Monday, where we'll talk about everything that happened the weekend. And all throughout all sports, we'll recap the wild card series. We'll recap college football, NFL, and if there's any NBA news or anything like that, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, it's a big weekend. We got postseason baseball. Obviously, wild card starts tomorrow, ends on Sunday, and then obviously college football Saturday, football Sunday. Big weekend. We'll recap all that for you on Monday. It's going to be a long episode, but thank you for sticking with us. This has been AKP Sports Talk. That's Ari. I'm Korea. We will see you guys on Monday for a recap of the MLB MLB Wild Card Weekend, Week 5 of the NFL, and Week 6 of college football. Thanks, guys.